In a stable trying to calm the horses spooked by the name
Frau Blücher.
It's the IGN Digigods. Now 2 men who'll tell you they have enormous Schwanzstückers, Wade Major and Mark Kaiser.
Oh, man, that was an awesome intro. Corey, to whom do we owe that?
That was written by Nicholas Gordon, making me uncomfortable, sort of speaking German.
That was a lot of fun sound editing before the show.
You hired someone to do that, didn't you?
Yes, that's no, of course not, because I'm all butterfingers, just like Bilbo Baggins. Can't hang on to anything.
Is that a Lord of the Rings thing?
Yeah, you've seen the Hobbit, the whole Hobbit trilogy.
I have not seen any of the Hobbit films.
Are you serious?
Couldn't care less.
Really?
You know what? I already suffered through 10 hours of Lord of the Rings. We gave him Best Picture. It's fine.
The Hobbit films I like them better. I do. I like them better.
But how does the Hobbit...
I like Martin Freeman a lot. I think he's great, and I like the story a little better. I just like the characters better. Billy Connolly shows up as a dwarf. You can't beat that.
How does it stack up to Doctor Who? We have a Doctor Who book this week.
We sure do. And it's interesting that comes now because there have been a lot of Doctor Who references on the Facebook page.
Well, we have the unofficial Doctor Who, the big book of lists, from Cameron K. McEwen. Now, I'll be the first one to say that I'm not the audience for this book. It looks very nice, so I'm really going to. I will really judge it basically on its layout and the quality of the paper. So, based on the layout and the quality of the paper, this is a fine book. It
is. No, it's actually really cool. This is obviously for Doctor Who fanatics, but when it comes to something like Doctor Who that's been on the air as long as this has, you can make some pretty unwieldy lists. And there's some fun stuff in here. I am obviously not as big of a Who fanatic as others, but there's an interesting, example. TV shows the Doctor Who references. Like, Doctor Who actually references other television shows. And it's fascinating. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Scooby-Doo, Star Trek, of course, gets a reference. Teletubbies gets referenced.
Now, why have they not done a Doctor Who movie?
Boy, that's a whole separate. That's a whole class of things unto itself. I think there was a Doctor Who movie before we were born that may have been released in theaters, but I'm not positive about that. But that's. But I know there have been endless conversations among certain executives at the BBC and elsewhere about whether to do that. And as I understand it, the reasoning is this. Doctor Who lives on television. It's a television phenomenon. The continuity is entirely television-based. And the feeling is there's not enough of a hardened audience that would go buy tickets outside of, Doctor Who people to justify it.
Well, because you'd have to spend $180 million,
and you would have to spend the first 90 minutes basically bringing people who are not part of the Doctor Who world up to speed on what the Time Lord means and what the TARDIS is.
Well, the question is, does it become?
Is it an origin story? The exposition required would be obnoxious.
Yeah, but look at and this is a horrible example because the movie sucked. But look at Dark Shadows. They made a Dark Shadows movie, which is a terrible film. But what I'm saying is that it stood apart from the Dark Shadows TV show.
Yes.
And that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think they want to do that.
They want the movie to be part of the continuity of
actors who appear in classic and new Who. Okay. Tom Baker, Peter Davison, Linda Barron. It's interesting.
Okay, why are we talking about that instead of the gift I got?
Yeah, that's right. So go ahead. Talk about the gift. Well, this, of course, came from Axel Peronio, thank you, who sent us copies of the rare Charlie Hebdos.
That's right, which I'm staring at right now. There it is.
Phenomenal.
Thank you, Axel.
Thank you, Axel. You are a mensch, and we appreciate that. And that is so thoughtful. I don't even know how to express it because we're a couple of cold fish here when it comes to emotional connection and whatnot.
No, I'm quite an emotional man. I've been known to cry at sporting events, dog food commercials.
Games when the Mets lose.
The Mets are the best team in baseball.
Are they really?
You realize the Mets are the best team in baseball right now.
No,
the Mets had an 11-game hitting.
I just know that there was some
11-game winning streak.
I just know there's like some Taiwanese player whose last name is Hu, and he got a base hit, and now everybody's like, "Oh, hey, who's on first? Hey, Abbott and Costello were right 7 years later," and it became a big internet joke. That's all I know.
Wade,
what?
The Mets are the best team in baseball. They have the best record.
Yeah,
you realize that.
It's
and by the way,
it's only April.
And by the way, I am gloating like you would not believe because in about 3 weeks they'll be in the middle of a 14-game losing streak. Okay, so Axel, he sent me something. Now I see it says for narc. Now I don't know if they.
That's an M.
It's really not. Axel, I have to say that it says for narc. Now, are you saying that I'm a narc? Am I that nerdy that you think I'm like I would rat you out?
You just don't know European handwriting script very well.
True. Now, do I know what this is, Wade?
No, you don't. I don't even know what this is.
Have I opened this up?
We have no idea.
I'm going to open it up right now.
He just says he added a little something for you, and hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Here it is.
It's never been released in the U.S. And it's not Camembert. That's what he said.
I'm opening it up right now. It's very exciting.
All right, here we go. This is like 50s television.
Motherfucker! Yes.
Oh, do I have to?
No. Yes. Yes. This is the greatest gift. Well, now here we say no. So this is now this you can watch this without French subtitles or French audio, right? You just watch it.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
God
Should be.
Damn it! This is the greatest gift I've ever been given, including my parents. Please enjoy this special feature Blu-ray for Team America, only released in Europe. Now out of print. It is supposed to be region free. Thank you for all your jokes, your expertise, and cooking advice all over the years. Take care, Axel. This is the greatest gift I've ever been given by anybody. Because I didn't know what it could be. I'm like, what could this be? Like Escape from New York? It just came out.
That's
some
pretty
Star
fantastic.
Trek 2 thing. That this is like unbelievable. I cannot thank you enough.
Axel, I'm sort of in awe of that's an awesome gift. That's cool. That is really cool. Thank you.
Should you bleep out what I? Nah, don't bleep it out. I had no idea what it was.
In post production, I will put a little. I'll put one of Corey's little Jerry Lewis things over it, so everyone who's listening to this will already know that.
Okay, well, do me a favor.
Yes.
Keep the mother part.
Yes.
And most of the effort part. Okay, I want people to know my actual true reaction was.
Will. Yes.
This is like the greatest gift I've ever been given. First of all, by a parent, a sibling, of which I have none.
Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny.
Yenta Claus, because I'm Jewish.
Yeah.
You know what? I didn't even want to open this. Because I feel like if I open it, it'll ruin his beautifulness.
Yeah.
I love this movie.
It's the best.
You realize I was the only person in Lafayette to name this one of the top 10 films of the decade.
That's good for you. You know what? But remember, Luke Thompson also named The Room one of the top 10 films of the decade. So
I cannot believe I got this. That's
pretty
so
awesome.
Unbelievably cool. Thank
Axel,
you so
you are
much.
awesome. Thank you, man.
Wow.
Well,
you know what? I'm actually going to keep the envelope too. I'm going to put the Blu-ray in the envelope, and then in my
keep the letter too.
The letter, and then in my Blu-ray case, I'll put it under T, and people will be like, "Why is that Blu-ray in a brown envelope?" And I'm going, "Well, I have a story." Because one of our most beloved listeners sent me a gift, and a gift that was greatly appreciated. Thank you very, very much. This too. Thank you very much.
While we're at it, let's in honor of Axel, let's go through some foreign films. And I'm going to hit some French films here right quickly. Audrey Tautou, the wonderful, delightful Audrey Tautou, in a film by Laetitia Colombani, who I'm not terribly familiar with, but there are tons of great filmmakers in France and all over Europe that I'm not that familiar with. This is from First Run Features, and Audrey Tautou is always just completely delightful. Especially
I'm going to put this on my shelf right now,
that.
Axel. Go, you talk about whatever crap that is.
I will. Anyway, this is just another Audrey Tautou love story, romantic comedy. But you know what? She's always good in them. The romantic comedies are kind of a dead genre in the U.S., but they continue to thrive in France, and thank God, because they've got great actresses like Audrey. Anyway, the basic idea: she's in love with a married guy, a married doctor who's going to soon be a father. And she resorts to measures that are rather unsavory, and then there are some really interesting little twists and turns, and in the end, you wind up just being incredibly charmed and sweetened by the whole thing. Also from First Run Features is a film called Vandal by a filmmaker named Elie Cisterne. also someone I am not familiar with. And this is actually probably going to be of interest more to people who are a little bit more familiar with French, French social situations presently. Very much a social criticism, as a lot of French dramas are these days, dealing specifically with immigrant groups in French urban environments, and in this case, it's it deals with youth, with graffiti and tagging and all of that. If you know the milieu, if you know the environment, it's a pretty hard-hitting film, but also very, very touching. Playing dead, Jean-Paul Salomé is a filmmaker I'm vaguely familiar with, and I wasn't overly thrilled with this. It's kind of a dark, comedic-y thriller. Kind of a whodunit, kind of a thriller. Didn't completely work for me. But it's stylish enough to sort of be engaging. Isabelle Huppert in Briante Mendoza's film Captive is absolutely outstanding. She is better than the film. This is actually not a French language film. This is in English and Tagalog because it takes place in the Philippines and deals with a hostage situation. And it means to be really well done, but it's mostly about her performance, and that's been fair enough. Isabelle Huppert is just absolutely amazing. And then, lastly, on this batch, from Cohen in a fantastic 2-film Blu-ray set, a couple of Philippe de Broca films for the first time ever on Blu-ray. That Man from Rio. And Up to His Ears, both of them with Jean-Paul Belmondo, and these are classics. These are just absolutely wonderful films. If you've never seen That Man from Rio, you are absolutely seriously missing out. And I want to dovetail this just for a second, especially That Man from Rio. That is just great. Now, Philippe de Broca, by the way, those who don't know, Philippe de Broca is one of the great French directors of all time, a master stylist, great with all genres. His films, if there's one thing in common with de Broca's films, it is that they are big and opulent and stylish, and they just there's a big screen, big movie sensibility to all of them. And he really knows how to dress everything up, and these are just so much fun, and Belmondo is absolutely fantastic. What I will say about this is That Man from Rio, if you're a fan of the OSS 117 films,
I am,
which you are, and which I am, you will love this, because it's a spy spoof, but it's a spy spoof from the era of spy spoofs. And it's just great. It's just so much fun. It is. It's smart, and it's great. Anyway, so that's a wonderful collaboration, actually, between de Broca and Jean-Paul Rapneau, who, of course, would go on to do Cyrano de Bergerac and a lot of other great films. And speaking of OSS 117, you know what I did a few days ago, don't you?
You made a spy spoof and had it released in France.
I moderated the Q&A with Michel Azanavicius at Colcoa, because they showed the first OSS 117 film as part of the Colcoa Classics screening, which is weird because it wasn't that long ago. It was just 2008. And I was actually the jury president the year that they had that, and I'm like, oh my gosh, has it been that long? But I guess it has. So anyway, I had the wonderful chance to sit down and have an hour-long Q&A with him in front of the audience, and it was wonderful. Talked a lot about the OSS 117 films, how they're shot, and how he emphasized the day for night photography. It was really interesting. They actually cranked up the blues in the day for night. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Isn't that interesting?
Now, did you know that, or did he reveal that?
He revealed that. Well, I asked him, I said specifically because I said you made a very conscious effort to emulate the look of films from the era, including shooting day for night, which no one does anymore. So I mean, it was specific that he said we're going to shoot our night scenes day for night so that they look like those old movies in the 50s and 60s. And he said, yeah, because now with digital tools you can really turn the blue up, and you can pick your blue and really give it the period look. So anyway, also talked about his new film, The Search, which was at Cannes last year. They trimmed it a little bit since Cannes, and that's going to be coming out soon, which is a completely dramatic film. It's based on the old Fred Zinnemann film from 1948, and except it's no longer World War II, but now it's set in the Second Chechenian War. It's really good. So
you know what? He could be the Michael Winterbottom. He does comedies. Yeah. He does dramas. Does a lot of different things.
What do you think, before we dive into the rest of the foreign language stuff, what do you think about the new film that Winterbottom is allegedly attached to?
Which is that?
You didn't hear about this?
No.
Oh, my gosh. It is Robert Simons, right? The super producer who's just got this new studio funded, STX Studios.
Right.
Okay, so Simons is building this big slate of like 15 films a year. He's going out hard. I mean, it's really impressive. And he's going to launch big. He's not starting small, like, well, we're going to do 2 films a year and eventually. No, he's like, we're coming out of the gate with like 15 movies a year and we are going to be a studio and we're a player. And one of those films is going to be the story of Russ Meyer and Roger Ebert
that's right.
doing Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
Great.
Which is a great story. But Winterbottom apparently is attached to direct it. Guess who's attached to play Russ Meyer?
Crispin Glover.
You could not get someone who looks more the part, but I wonder if it's almost going to be a camp performance. Will Ferrell. Will Ferrell is going to play Russ Meyer,
and Jonah Hill will play Roger Ebert.
Probably. I mean, that would sort of lock it down. But it's like, wow, that is really interesting casting. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I trust Winterbottom and I trust Will Ferrell, but
Ferrell's done a couple of dramas, but
that's a bigger stretch than he's ever done before.
Yeah,
that's a real stretch.
It sounds like it could be a drama, but it has outlandish notes to it.
The thing is, Russ Meyer is a very particular personality. I have had I don't want to call it the pleasure, I've had the distinction of having a conversation on the phone with Russ, and it's when we were trying to convince him to be part of Schlock. We were unsuccessful because Russ was, determined that he was going to make a documentary about himself, and he didn't want to compete with himself. He never did. He wound up, his health took a turn for the worse, and that was very sad. But I talked to him. Ray talked to him. We did our best. But he was just a really flamboyant, into himself, gravelly personality, and he was very prickly. What did he say to me? He said, "Yeah, Sam Markoff wanted me to make movies for him once," and I said, "F you." This was. He's telling me these things on the phone. So I don't know. Will Ferrell doing an impersonation of Russ Meyer becomes camp. But if Will Ferrell can kind of move past the Ferrellness, the SNL-ness, and get inside who Russ Meyer really was, the best thing I heard about Russ Meyer was a quote that FX Feeney quoted in Schlock, where he said that apparently, I forget who it was, but somebody was at a party with Russ Meyer, and Russ said, if I hadn't been so into big tits, I could have been Orson Welles. And he's kind of right in a way.
I guess, but if you look at Orson Welles' career as a director, I mean, how many
people would have taken him seriously as an artist, as a filmmaker,
all right,
if it weren't for the fact that his films are filled with women who are just enormously endowed. And if you look at films like Mudhoney in particular, they're not exploitation films. They're not crap movies. They're not like low budget. They're not. Jess Franco movies, right? They're not cheeseball low, but there's real craftsmanship to it. There's real storytelling, and he's a fascinating figure.
But it's the same thing with someone like Roger Corman or even Monty Hellman, where you're like,
it's very true.
Absolutely, you pigeonhole them into a certain thing, but that doesn't mean that they're not craftsmen in their own right.
True.
What's also true is that we're not talking about DVDs or Blu-rays.
Go on.
I'm a huge fan of A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. This is a Iranian...
Don't get it.
Really?
I just don't get it.
Well, I will say this. I don't know how much... Once you get by the style, which is just gorgeous. I mean, it's a graphic novel come to life. And the Blu-ray from Kino Lorber, they really knocked it out of the park. It includes a collectible graphic novel with an essay. Once you get away from the visuals, I don't know how much there is there, but Anna Lily Amirpour is just a very promising young stylist, just fantastic. It's like no movie you've ever seen. It had moments that were very haunting. That scene where the guy and the girl are together and they're playing the record in her bedroom, that's some pretty amazing stuff.
It is. I shouldn't be really totally down on it. It's got a lot of really impressive stuff in it. As a resume film, I think it's interesting. The style, the concept. I'm really tired of anything to do with vampires. I got to be honest, and we got another one coming up here. More gay vampires, which I'll comment on momentarily. But
I would not watch this because you're afraid of vampire films. If you want to see something very visual, here's what I'll say: Imagine the Sin City films.
Yes.
right? It's black and white, very stylish, not quite noir lighting, but just very cool black and white light. It's subversive and it's smart and it's visually ambitious, and I just thought it was terrific. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night.
I concur. It is interesting.
Concur.
However, I still feel it's more of a resume piece. It's easy to admire from a technical standpoint, but I'm more interested to see what she does next. That's what I want to do. That's what I want to see. I want to see where this goes. This is a film that was designed to catch your attention, not necessarily to be a landmark film. So in one sense it works, in another I don't think it works quite so well. But I respect it. I just don't particularly care for it. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay.
Like most things you say, no sense.
All right. Mommy won the jury prize at last year's Cannes Film Festival, and it was praised more at the time than it was when it finally got released. Xavier Dolan, who directed it and wrote it, is a very talented stylist, and it's an interesting concept. I think I agree probably more with I think everybody kind of loved him so much based on his previous work that they just went bananas at Cannes. I'm not so sure that it actually holds up once we get outside the confines of a film festival. But it's basically about a woman who is, she's a single mom, she's lost her husband, and she's trying to deal with a teenage son who has ADHD. And that's it. There's really not a lot else to it. It's well done for what it is, but it still feels like a kind of like a television movie that's been given this really glossy French European art house feel and edge, and it's fine. Good performances: Anne Dorval, Antoine Olivier Pilon, and Suzanne Clément. But it's not gonna sort of, and it's not gonna stand the test of time, I don't think. But the film is Mommy. It is not on Blu-ray. It is only on DVD from Lionsgate.
Wait, there's a must-rent called Silence of the Sea, right? Le Silence de la Mer.
That's correct. Jean-Pierre Melville.
And I'm a huge Jean-Pierre Melville fan. Le Cirque Rouge, Le Samurai, right?
Yeah.
Bob Flambert. Love him. He's awesome. This is his first feature film, and it is from 1949, and it's just great. You can already you can tell that Melville is becoming this brilliant visualist. It takes place in Nazi-occupied France. There's this Nazi who was billeted in this middle-class home with this middle-aged man and his grown, he's the niece. And because this German Nazi is in their home, they greet him with silence, and they don't talk to this guy because he's a Nazi in their home, and it's wartime and it's occupied France, and so he's going to sit there and keep himself safe in the home of this middle-aged guy and his niece. So they just greet him with silence, and it's all about like these little glances and looks that are just, every little look means so much from each of these people, and it's just, no one really remembers this film, but it's so good. And I got to tell you, if you're a huge fan of French cinema, if you're a huge fan of Melville, which you should be, I doubt you've seen Silence of the Sea, but it is really, really good. And, of course, once again, Criterion knocks it out of the park. They have a short called The 24 Hours in the Life of a Clown, which is Melville's first film. That was the film he did right before this. And a bunch of other extras, including a 45-minute documentary on the making of this film, which was great because you really get to see him at work. You get to see what he was thinking that early in his career. So Le Silence de la Mer, I cannot recommend highly enough. It's great.
It's a good film. I agree.
Yep.
We've got some gay titles really quickly. Get through these for those of our listeners who are interested in this particular field. Some of them cross over, some of them don't. Drink Me is another one of those gay vampire movies that I don't know why this is a thing. It's a couple of guys, and one of them loses his job, and they take on another guy to help pay the rent, and he turns out to be a vampire. Go figure. I really don't understand that whole routine. Land of Storms is a Hungarian German co-production, primarily Hungarian, and it's in Hungarian and German about a couple of guys who are a couple of soccer players, and it moves through their relationship into a love triangle. Really only noteworthy because it's a European setting, German and Hungarian setting. Gay films don't exactly have a strong root in Hungary, for example. From Wolf is The Circle by Stefan Haupt. as long as we are in the European end of things. And this is a little more kind of classic and stylish. It's got a kind of a documentary edge to it, and it's a bit higher level than the usual gay film festival quality. So The Circle is probably worth watching. A real crossover film that's really interesting is Boy Meets Girl. And that's because it's from Eric Schaefer, who somehow overcame the curse of being considered this really pretentious wannabe Woody Allen for a long time. And Eric Schaefer has actually turned into kind of an indie auteur. And he's never had his breakout film, but he keeps making movies, and they keep being consistently interesting and taking interesting new twists. And this is particularly interesting, coming on the heels, as it does, of the Bruce Jenner interview. And I will leave it at that. Because it's got, it would give too much away. So, Boy Meets Girl, based on what I just said, you fill in the blanks. But it's not. It doesn't mean to be overly edgy. It's not trying to shock. It's not trying to make fun. It kind of hits a very, very interesting narrative path. So, with that, I would say if you're an Eric Schaefer fan, which I have been and I have not been at times, like. The first film that he made with that he co-directed, My Life's in Turnaround. Did you ever see that?
Yes, long time ago.
Stupid film, but intermittently funny.
Sure.
So
you saw some promise there.
Yeah, you saw some promise. And then lastly, on the gay front, Hustler White, film by Bruce LaBruce and Rick Castro, who I guess are both fixtures in.
That's not his real name.
I know.
Bruce,
I know they're both kind of fixtures in the gay film festival and the gay scene. So anyway, Rick Castro is photographer. Bruce LaBruce is a filmmaker. Anyway, this is a kind of a period thing, somewhat period. I hate to think of the 90s as period, but anyway, basically deals with the hustling scene in Santa Monica in the 1990s. Which, frankly, if you were here in L.A. in the 1990s and you drove through a certain section of Santa Monica Boulevard, you could not help but be exposed to it. There was like
in West Hollywood, right?
In West Hollywood.
Yeah,
I mean, there
was that classic porn theater that's not there anymore.
It's the Tomcat.
The Tomcat. It's there, but it
used to be a Pussycat theater, and we actually shot a lot of the old fronts of the old Pussycat theaters when we were doing Schlock, because that was part of the exploitation film's late phase. They all have been turned into other things now. There are no more left in L.A., but there are facades for some of them. That's one of them. And I think that's one of the only two that's actually still a theater of any kind. But in any case, the thing that's interesting about that area is that's the only place where you will see like gay adult bookstores and porn theaters mixed in with Russian butchers and bakers and
candlestick makers
and little old Russian ladies walking, and Russian mobsters like sharing the sidewalk with drag queens. It's the strangest. It's a very strange place where different, completely opposing worlds meet. It's Russia and it's that, and it's a very strange thing. So anyway,
are you closer to the Russian community or the gay community? I don't know where that's going. You don't have to answer that.
Yeah, I was looking for a joke, but I couldn't come up with one.
Oh, it's a joke, all right.
Yeah, that's the better joke is the one from 48 Hours when Eddie Murphy goes into the bar and says, "What do you got?" And he goes, "How about a black Russian?" Remember that? It's a good joke.
Why is there no?
It's a good joke.
Yeah, but why is there no Blu-ray for 48 Hours?
I know.
How can there not be a Blu-ray? By the way, speaking of Eddie Murphy, this has something to do with Eddie Murphy. Pre-order now. One of my favorite horror films of my very, very early years, Wolfen.
Oh,
Wolfen.
My gosh, I know, right?
Is can be pre-ordered.
Wolfen's on its way.
Yep.
Sure.
Albert Finney.
All right, Mark. Let's talk about new movies.
New movies.
New movies. Let's get into it.
No idea what you're talking about.
New movies. Jennifer Aniston and Cake. What an interesting thing this turned out to be. So here's the deal. Cake. Jennifer Aniston's trying to forge a career as a real actress again, right? Don't associate me with things or romantic comedies or whatever. I want to be considered a real
stop
actor.
doing crap.
Right. So that's why she made Cake. Cake's a real movie. Cake's a real performance. About a woman who's suffering, who's been through some kind of a horrible disfiguring accident, and she's going through all kinds of chronic pain therapy, and she's on medication. And it is you don't know what happened to her, right? You fill in the blanks of what her life was and her her previous marriage, and you're sort of trying to just through. And she has this assistant, and you're piecing all of this together.
Turns out what it is: herpes.
Exactly. Hangnail. Anyway, so basically what this is about is you're piecing this together, and much of it is through the eyes. Well, it's through her eyes, but a lot of your emotional connection is through the Latina woman who is basically her permanent assistant, who's her driver and drives her around, takes care of her, and suffers endless abuse. And but there's a woman who in her support group who winds up committing suicide, and that precipitates an investigation. And through her investigation of this woman's suicide, her backstory is revealed, and it's a strong performance. The movie's not perfect, but it's really well put together. And in some ways maybe more of a television movie. What I find interesting is this thing got no Oscar nominations, but it got a SAG nomination. And it did well with the guilds, but they didn't push it at all with the critics groups, and they didn't push it at all with the Academy, which I find so strange, because it could easily have gotten a few nominations.
Well, she was considered number 6 or 7 in terms of Best Actress nominations.
But if they pushed it harder...
You know what? Look, here's the thing. First of all, I don't think Jennifer Aniston should get an Oscar nomination for showing up.
No, she doesn't. She's really good in this.
She finally decided to show up.
She did.
And she finally decided to give a performance and do the work.
Yeah.
And, maybe if she does that another 2-3 times, then maybe they'll give her something.
Probably true. Anyway, this is on Blu-ray with Ultraviolet, and I do recommend this.
Wade, one of the most highly acclaimed films of last year was a horror film.
Yes, it was.
It's called the...
little Australian horror film.
It's called the Babadook. And, I saw this...
I nominated Mr. Babadook for New Generation, and no one took me seriously. He might have shown up. Would have been a real just killer of an evening if he had shown up. Lights go out. Babadook.
I have to say that I was not destroyed by this film like other...
It didn't scare the hell out of you.
It really did.
No.
What I liked about this film is that it's a female director, a female star, a female angle. I think that's great.
And a low budget.
At a low budget. They got a lot out of the low budget.
And mind you, a low budget that they don't use to make a found footage movie. M. Night Shyamalan just made a found footage movie.
I know.
Come on.
That's terrible.
Grow up.
That's terrible.
Are you kidding me?
But, the fact that it was directed by this woman, Jennifer Kent, who also wrote it, you get a sense of what a male director would have included that a female director did not include.
Yes.
However, and all of that said, that doesn't make this a scary movie.
No.
It's
a fun movie.
It's a fun movie.
Yes.
If this was directed by John Smith, you'd be like, oh, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But because it's directed by a woman, you were inflating it a little bit. I'm trying not to be politically correct. I'm just saying that...
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. I mean, we normally associate... when it comes to horror films, we usually assume that women are emotionally more connected and less psychotic and more well-balanced than men. And the reason that horror films directed by men tend to be scarier is because men are just a bunch of sick bastards who infect their movies with all of their anxieties and their fears and their peccadillos and what have you. And that women are just too well adjusted to actually freak us out. That's where you're going, right? Did I read that correctly?
Well, you said it better than I.
Thank you. Well, no, and I concur with that, which is why women don't generally gravitate to these kinds of films as directors. But that being said, what I think is interesting about this is not that it is scary. It's not that scary, but it's creepy. And there's a difference between creepy and scary. And most American horror films lately are just, they mean to be scary, but they're just gross and gory, and they're not creepy. I prefer creepy to scary. And what's great about this is that she invents a mythology just for this film. The book and the art design. And
like Jumanji.
It's great. It's fantastic.
It's the Jumanji of horror films.
It's really good. So Jennifer Kent, you are terrific. And this also includes her short film Monster, which is also terrific. Jennifer Kent is a big deal. And don't even think, in scary films or horror films. She's a big deal. She's very talented. It's a tight script. It's well directed. And the performances are fantastic. And it's definitely going to set her up for some stuff. So hopefully she doesn't get called to do a Marvel movie. That seems to be the minefield where everybody gets sent to die after they've done some kind of a great independent film.
She can direct Wonder Woman.
No,
somebody has to.
Yeah, well, no, that's going to be what's her name who did Monster.
She's
doing.
That's right.
Yeah, she's doing it. Kimberly Pierce. But anyway, yeah, the Babadook. It's nice packaging too. It's
Nice.
it's a regular Blu-ray case, but it comes in this. IFC spent a little bit of money for a change and put it into this kind of cool dark burgundy slipcover. It's really groovy.
Wade, here's the thing with Taken 3. It's
the most unnecessary movie ever made.
better than the second one.
So
not as good as the
unnecessary.
first one. Let's call it a day. And just assume that whatever, you know what, look, Liam Neeson, we all know that he's in becoming an action hero. In my opinion, he's working out his anxiety
Yes.
about the fact that he couldn't save his wife, right? His wife tragically died in a skiing accident.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that he feels if he does these movies where he like saves his daughter and saves his wife, he is
Yep.
working out the anxiety of the fact that he couldn't save her.
Yep,
That's what I think.
I hear you.
So now that he's done 3 Taken films and all those other films nonstop and blah, blah, just enough already.
Yep.
I'm sure there's a period piece you could be doing now with a prestige director. Enough of that. So Taken 3 takes place in L.A., which goes to show you, at least budgetarily, they've given up. Not shooting in Paris, not
No.
shooting in some far-off land.
Turkey was the last one.
Shooting in L.A., don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Let's shoot in L.A., crank it out in 30 days, get it over with, shoot some things, let's all go home.
We don't have to move anybody
No,
anywhere. Yeah,
we do not. So let's just figure that Taken 3 is the end. And let's hope it's the end.
It needs to be.
Yes.
It really does.
Enough of
Give
this.
him something else to do. Doesn't have to. I mean, Taken as Liam Neeson as a brand is now just as valuable as Taken as a brand, right? He doesn't need to be in a movie called Taken 4, 5, 6 in order for people to go, oh, it's cool, it's Liam Neeson. Like, people want to see him just kick butt now, and you could put that in just about any movie, and I think it'll still work.
Why
So there's that.
Why was Taken 2 not called Taken 2 Electric Boogaloo?
They considered it.
Did
And
they?
yeah, they did, but they figured it might be a little confusing with the half dozen other movies that had Electric Boogaloo in the title. Okay, Selma. Boy, was there any movie less? How would I phrase this? Is there any movie that was more talked about for not getting the honors that people felt it deserved last year?
Yeah, that really annoyed me. You know what? It really.
It almost, I think, worked against the film getting its awards.
And Selma's a terrific film. And by the
It
way,
is. It's a great film.
it's terrific for what it doesn't do, just as much as for what it does do.
I agree.
But that said, I was really annoyed that because it didn't get all the awards that everyone thought, because it's Martin Luther King, somehow everybody's racist and everybody. Stop it.
And I think there was also a feeling that because 12 Years a Slave had won the year before, that this was intentionally being overlooked because, quote unquote, well, we did the black thing last year. Do we have to do this every year? Like, some people really felt that there was a little bit of residual backlash because it came so close on the heels of another movie that had American history and civil rights implications. I don't know if any of that's true. I don't think it is. It was a very competitive year. I do know this. Had they pushed Selma harder with the Academy, or had they pushed it with the Academy, but had they pushed it harder with the guilds, they would have done better. It didn't do well with the guilds because Paramount kind of blew it with their guild strategy. They didn't send copies, they didn't send screeners to anybody with the guilds. So it got no love from SAG, it got no love from the producers, no love from the directors. So it had no heat on it other than what might have been given it by critics groups. And it was a hugely competitive year. I mean, when you have some of the films that the critics loved got no love when it came to other awards, especially the Oscars. So, Most Violent Year being case in point. That was right out of the gates. National Board of Review, Best Picture, and then it bonked, got nothing else. So Selma wound up getting 2 Oscar nominations, one for Best Picture and the other for Song, and it wound up winning Song. So, there is, clearly it was on people's short list. It just wasn't on the short 5 list. That said, I love this movie. I think this is an outstanding film. It has a very difficult balancing act to manage because it's dealing with historical figures who are so fresh in our memory, and it's dealing with a subject that is, again, very much in the news, and it's very hard to make that story work dramatically without it appearing to be a lecture, a big, grand, hit-you-over-the-head polemic. And I give Ava DuVernay all the credit. Ava DuVernay, who directed it, used to be a publicist. Used to have her own agency, the DuVernay Agency. 20 years ago, a lot of us worked with her on a regular basis, and she was outstanding as a publicist. And I think she has a huge career ahead of her now as a director. David Oyelowo pulled her onto this project when what's his face?
Lee Daniels
fell out. And all I can say is thank God.
Can you
Almighty.
imagine? Can you imagine
oh my gosh!
Can you imagine the free for all? This movie would have been.
Oh my gosh!
There is no 2 more dichotomous names in terms of directing style than Lee Daniels and Ava DuVernay.
Because Ava DuVernay is subtle and there's like a quiet power to what she does. Everything is more powerful because it's understated. With Lee Daniels, everybody is just cranked up to 11, and they are just on this high pitch, and he really belongs on TV. Do Empire. Just stay there, please. That's your thing, man. Stick with that and just keep rocking it with that and getting those high ratings, and don't make any more movies, please. But Ava does a fantastic job here. It's so well directed, and there are sections of this that will just tear your heart out.
And he's great. I
David
love
Oyelowo
him. He's so good.
Because you know what? He's not trying to do impersonations of Martin Luther King. He's actually trying to sort of get inside the essence and the soul of the man, his vulnerabilities, his insecurities. And let's remember, this is called Selma. It's not about Martin Luther King. It's about the people. And as I've pointed out many times, this movie asks a very simple question. It is not an overly political film. Clearly, it has a certain political point of view. But what it really asks is, it asks a much bigger question. Does the movement make the man, or does the man make the movement? And it doesn't necessarily answer that question. It leaves it up to you, but I think it's a really interesting question, and it does it extremely well. Great casting in here, too, by the way. All the British actors. David Oyelowo is British.
And the woman who played his wife?
Yes,
Greta
she's
Scott?
great. She's great.
Beautiful.
And Tim Roth plays Louisiana governor, what's his name?
Melly Steve?
Yeah, no. Yeah. Oh gosh, why
George Wallace.
George Wallace, thank you. And then, of course, you have Tom
Wilkinson.
Tom Wilkinson playing
LBJ.
LBJ, fantastic. Does a really great job. Those scenes between Martin Luther King and LBJ are just to die
They're
for.
Great.
They're great.
This
so
movie's
well
terrific. It's absolutely terrific.
Lots of extras on here. Commentary with Ava DuVernay and David Oyelowo that is superb, absolutely superb. If you aren't impressed by her as a director just from watching the film, you will be impressed after hearing the incredibly eloquent way in which she discusses the film on the commentary. First rate, all across the board.
Yep, I agree. But then again, if it didn't get nominated for what you wanted to get nominated for, too bad. Them's the breaks. With all the movies I love and Wade loves and everybody loves, sometimes you can't get nominated for everything.
And Paddington Bear, Collector's Edition. We've talked about before the 3-disc set from Mill Creek. With this wonderful stop-motion Paddington Bear classic animation is just first rate. It's so much fun, but I don't think it's as fun as the feature film Paddington, which is now out from Anchor Bay. Weinstein blew a chance with this. Weinstein released this in November in the UK and did killer numbers. Could have released this for the holidays. There would have been no other family films other than Into the Woods for them to compete against in December, and they instead decided to release it in January, and I think they blew it. They released it a little bit of a qualifying run, so it's technically a 2014 film, but it should have been for Christmas. They should have just thrown it all out there. This is such a wonderful movie. Paul King, who directed this, has kind of come out of nowhere and is now suddenly everybody's hot new director. The story of Paddington Bear told with a CGI bear that is just really well done. But he comes to he's lost his family and he comes looking to reconnect with the explorer who sort of taught his family and all the other bears how to be sophisticated British bears in the jungle.
I remember when you left the screening.
Yes.
You called me and said, maybe you emailed me. You said, "Oh my God, this is the greatest film I've ever seen in my life."
It's the greatest family film I've seen in 20 years. It really is. It's like the best family film. It's so wonderful. Sally Hawkins and Hugh Bonneville, of course, of Downton Abbey, are the parents of the family that take him in, and they are so wonderful. And they're just delightful. Peter Capaldi, who's the new Doctor Who, is their very suspicious neighbor who winds up getting sucked in by Nicole Kidman's villainous character, who I will not say anything else about. But it's a great plot. It's a great story. The direction is so smart. The script is so smart. You will be shocked that a family film was given this much effort to really work.
I have your actual email.
Go ahead, hit me.
This is the actual. I looked it up. This is the actual email that Wade sent me on Tuesday, December 9th, 2014. Subject line: Paddington Advanced Screening. All caps, see this with 7 exclamation points. And I'm not kidding. If this were a 2014 release, it would make my top 10.
And it actually was.
That's an actual Wade Major email to me.
It wound up being considered a 2014 release because they had a qualification run. So it did make my top 10, I believe.
You're out of your mind.
Yep, there you go. All right, let's haul butt a little bit through the remainder of these.
Wade, we have Paul Thomas Anderson's latest, Inherent Vice. This movie, you know what? This is a type of film where you
Stoner noir. It bored me to tears.
You know, this does not seem like a film that Wade would like. It is a film, however, I conditionally liked.
It's like the Maltese Falcon, in which everybody has. It's like the Maltese Falcon set in the 70s, and Sam Spade.
No, what it is
Sam Spade is stoned out of his mind and does everything at half speed.
No, this is a spiritual sequel to The Long Goodbye. Because it's confusing. It takes place in L.A., and this is a movie where either you get into its groove or you don't. And if you don't get into its groove, it's groovy. And it's just a stoner romp that I found really strange. It's a movie made up of individual moments that do not even remotely add up to an entire film. But the thing is that Paul Thomas Anderson is always so in control of what he wants to do. It's not like he doesn't know that.
Oh, I know he knows that. And the book, apparently, I guess if you're a fan of the book, it's spot on. But I'm not a fan of the book.
Josh Brolin is so funny.
Yeah, it just didn't work for me.
I thought this thing was great. It's really well shot. Again, it's not brilliantly. It's not brilliant, vibrant color shot. Yeah. Again, this is shot through just a haze of pot smoke, and it looks beautiful on Blu-ray.
Blu-ray, DVD, and ultraviolet, and it's not exactly bloated with extras, but it'll do.
That'll do, pig. That'll do.
Maps to the Stars, man. This just rocks. I have not loved a Cronenberg film this much in a long time. Julianne Moore could very easily. I mean, this could have gotten her an Oscar if the other performance didn't in Still Alice. This is just man. This is a mean, acerbic, angry, bitter, vicious, hateful anti-Hollywood movie. This makes the player look like like a Valentine to Hollywood. It really does.
Sometimes I find some of these anti-Hollywood films a little.
Oh my gosh.
They're actually kind of self-congratulatory.
This is in no way self-congratulatory. This is so caustic, it's unbelievable. Essentially, there are a variety of characters whose fates are all intertwined, and you don't sort of figure that out until midway through the movie. But Julianne Moore is an aging actress who desperately wants to land a part that was made famous by her mom, and she's sort of living in her mom's shadow. But she is the quintessential self-absorbed, insecure, goofy, new agey Hollywood actress. John Cusack is kind of this new agey, guru-y guy who was their son was a child star, and there's a whole bunch of baggage in that. And then Mia Wasikowska is this strange woman who's a little bit scarred, and we're not quite sure how she plugs into all this. In any case, it really, man, this thing, once it gets going, I was sitting next to Linda Wheat, our LAFCA colleague of People magazine, when I saw this screening. And there's a point in this movie where something so horrible happens, and the way people react to it is so psychotic and offensive and incomprehensible, and yet so typically Hollywood that it makes you sick to your stomach. It makes you almost hate everything that is the entertainment business. You almost think this whole town should just be burned down because people are like this. And I won't tell you, but it's a moment that is just, it violates every moral tenet that every normal human being has. But it's so Hollywood. And in that moment, Linda just gasped. She gasped audibly and grabbed my arm, and she looked at me with this just abject horror in her face, and I just started laughing because how do you even cope with something like that? I recommend this. I just can't recommend this highly enough. If it'll make you want to do anything other than be in this business, it really. It's just, and Robert Pattinson is in it, of course. He plays this chauffeur who wants to be a writer. Don't they all?
Yeah. Wade, you're an angry man.
I am an angry man.
You know what makes me angry, Wade?
What makes you angry?
Kevin Hart.
Why?
Because I don't get it. I don't get it. Not on board. Everybody loves Kevin Hart except me.
I like Kevin Hart, but I think he's got to do something dramatic. He's got to show.
Not yet. He's too busy on social media, making jokes and doing these horrible movies like The Wedding Ringer, and just. Yeah. I mean, I guess he was funny when he did the Justin Bieber roast, but I just not feeling this guy. And The Wedding Ringer is the sort of disposable, comedy that guys like this always seem to make when they're stand-ups and they're first starting out and first getting their movies. And, it's just got to stop. You know what? Just just hone your craft. Do more
I hear you.
clever comedy, and I just feel like this guy. I don't get it. And the movie's not good anyway. Josh Gad's in it, and Josh Gad, a guy who Monday he was nobody, and Tuesday he's everywhere. I don't even know who Josh Gad is.
He was.
He's on that FX show now.
He's a Broadway guy. And he's like, if you can't afford Jonah Hill, you hire Josh Gad.
I'm sure Josh Gad knows that.
That's how
Probably doesn't make him very happy.
That's kind of how it goes.
So there's The Wedding Ringer. There's your cheap, unsatisfying Saturday night rental.
Yeah.
The Wedding Ringer.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what Jennifer Lopez is thinking with The Boy Next Door, because you know what? Here's the thing. Jennifer Lopez, she's a quadrillionaire. She's on American Idol, and she does albums, and so she doesn't need to do just B-movie pulpy crap like The Boy Next Door. I don't know what she's thinking. Maybe she thinks because I'm in my 40s now, the fact that I can bring him in my 40s doing a role like this makes me feel sexy. I have no idea.
Pretty generic thriller.
It's Rob Cohen. It's totally generic. I have no idea how they looped her into this, unless this is done by maybe one of her companies or something. Or it's just really sad that she would do this. I mean, not that Jennifer Lopez is going to go out and win an Oscar any day or do some Merchant Ivory film, but there's got to be better material that attracts her more than The Boy Next Door, because I just think it's a waste. Total waste.
All right, I got a bunch of kind of mid-level indies here that I'm just going to roll through fairly quickly. The first one is Aftermath, One Man's Overreaction. Anthony Michael Hall has tried to forge really kind of an interesting career. He's showing up in all kinds of stuff now, and you just don't even, unless you know it's Anthony Michael Hall, you probably don't even realize that this is the guy from all those John Hughes movies in the 80s. He's a decent actor, and he's really kind of trying to stretch it, and this is an okay film. It's about a guy who's a contractor, and he's a developer, but he has a clash with a subcontractor played by Chris Penn, which tells you how long ago this was made, because Chris is long since no longer with us. And things get out of control. They go completely out of hand. And it's a little bit contrived, a little bit forced as to how this all kind of transpires. Get some good supporting performances. Tony Danza and Frank Whaley show up in interesting supporting parts. I'm very forgiving of this because I think Anthony Michael Hall is a good actor, and he's really trying to do some interesting things. And it was nice to see Chris in a thing again. For those who don't know, I grew up with Chris. Knew him from the time we were 12 years old, and it made me very, very sad that he passed away so young. Was never kind to his body, but Chris never really got the props that he deserved as an actor. He won an award at the Venice Film Festival once for that Abel Ferrara film, and everybody just always kind of stuck him in the shadow of his brother, which was never quite fair. So it's nice to still see a few posthumous performances coming through that show what he can do, and Chris does a good job here. So guarded recommendation for Aftermath. We also have the completely unnecessary Marine 4 Moving Target. I just don't know what justifies continuing to make more of these things. They are all totally generic. It doesn't matter who's in them anymore. This has Mike the Miz Mizanin and Summer Rae. I don't even know who these people are. I assume they have some connection to WWE. Regardless, this thing is just a lot of pyrotechnics and AFM sexiness, and it's kind of pointless. Little Accidents had a little bit of attention briefly because it has some good performances in it from Chloe Sevigny, Boyd Holbrook, and most particularly Elizabeth Banks, who continues to do interesting work, albeit uneven work. Written and directed by Sarah Colangelo, who does a good job with the actors, has a certain visual style. The whole missing kid storyline, the whole kind of small town thing feels a little bit familiar, but I think everybody in it, you can forgive them. It's an independent film. They're doing their best. And The Walking Deceased. Not really as funny as it should be. We're into Zucker Brothers spoof territory here, trying to sort of spoof the whole zombie thing now, which I think has already been spoofed to death. And there's nothing here that hasn't already been done better by somebody else. It's not bad. It's just, again, really worn and familiar. Teeth and Blood, another vampire movie. The 9,000th one that we've had in the last year and a half. This one deals specifically with vampires going after blood from the donated blood bank, and I don't know. There's just nothing new in that whole genre. It just all feels derivative. And then lastly, on this little stack, Val Kilmer, desperately trying to resurrect his career, plays Mark Twain in Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, a completely unrelated thing that has nothing to do with anything that Twain ever wrote, other than using the two characters and kind of putting them into a sort of strange Indiana Jones-ish adventure. I don't really get it. I don't know why this movie exists. But that being said, watching Val Kilmer play Mark Twain is kind of a camp classic. There's a lot of entertainment value in that, and it's not necessarily intentional.
Wade, Scott Glenn is one of our favorite longtime character actors.
Ooh, have you watched Daredevil yet?
No.
On Netflix?
You love that show.
It hooked me, man. It really did.
Really? It's good?
Yeah. It's good. Scott Glenn shows up in it at a certain point. He plays Stick. Did you ever read the comics?
Yes. I do remember there was a Stick. I don't know who he was or what he did.
Stick's the mystical kind of, martial arts wise dude who taught Daredevil all he knows.
Wow.
Yeah. He's also blind. Stick.
But is he deaf?
So anyway, Scott Glenn plays Stick, which is great casting.
Well, he's neither blind nor deaf. And The Barber, now we like The Barber because it gives Scott Glenn front and center placement in a film, which I know is completely and totally unique because he's always he's one of the great character actors. The movie is not that great. He plays a barber who years ago got off on a murder charge for insufficient evidence, and now the son of the detective who unsuccessfully tried to get him thrown in jail has returned. And what does he find, Wade? He finds Scott Glenn is the barber.
No.
Anyway, this thing is very it's ambitious, but it's very uneven. It reminds you a little bit of of other films of urban serial killer on the loose kind of thing where he's hiding in plain sight. But I just think that this thing is just not that great. There's a lot of twists in it, and it winds up being twist after twist for no particular reason. The cat and mouse stuff has been done better in other films. Not that clever. Not really no tension to it. The director really does not ratchet it up enough. So The Barber's not really very good. I can see Scott Glenn being interested because again he gets the top line it, and of course Stephen Tobolowsky's in it. And anything Stephen Tobolowsky is in,
I can't even look at him on screen without thinking of Groundhog Day.
That's right.
Every single time.
That's right. He's the best. The Gambler with Mark Wahlberg. This is one of those films. It's kind of like, it's a little like The Counselor, like Killing Them Softly. It's very sort of dark and noirish thing where
just kind of lays there, though.
Just kind of lays there. Mark Wahlberg plays a English professor who's also a high-stakes gambler, and he's got a bar from a guy from the mob. Now, this was directed by Rupert Wyatt, who did the first Planet of the Apes film and jumped off and gave it to Matt Reeves to do the second Planet of the Apes film, and then Rupert wound up doing this.
I don't know. That was a good choice.
I'm not sure he had a choice, actually. I wonder about that.
I'm glad for Matt, but it's wow, that's...
Exactly.
But I mean, Wyatt's going to have a career. He hasn't
done anything since. I'm curious what he's doing next. So he's
taking meetings and he'll land something big.
So this is one of those, Saturday Night Rental sort of things. Wyatt is talented. I like seeing Mark Wahlberg. He's one of the most unlikely leading men in the world coming after Marky Mark and all that kind of crap. Next we have Accidental Love. This is a little nothing of a film with a great cast that it does not deserve. Jessica Biel, Jake Gyllenhaal, Catherine Keener. So what happens is Jessica Biel is involved in a freak accident where there's a nail lodged in her head, and she starts acting very erotic, actually anerratic. The fiancé is played by James Marsden. He calls off the engagement, and then all sorts of craziness ensues. Interesting here, this features Tracy Morgan, so this was shot at least 18 months ago because Tracy Morgan is still recovering from his tragic accident. So, I don't know what to say about Accidental Love. It is not that great, not that funny, lacks wit. People run around being frantic, but that doesn't mean it's funny. So, I would really pass on Accidental Love as much as the cast is really good.
All right, we're going to do some classic stuff, and then we're going to call an end to the show. I've got a bunch of Kino and Olive stuff that I'm going to go through, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mark to wrap us out. The Olive stuff, really good pack of Olive films this week, 5 in total. starting with Teachers with Nick Nolte and Jo Beth Williams and Judd Hirsch. Teachers from 1984, good year. Not a movie that a lot of people paid an awful lot of attention to at the time, but it kind of dates pretty well.
It was controversial at the time.
It was, but it was sort of, I don't know, it was like most Arthur Hiller films of the era. It wasn't gritty enough. It was a little too 70s. But it wasn't bad. It wasn't, a complete misfire. It just didn't sort of, it was a little too commercial to be edgy, and it was a little too edgy to be commercial. I think that was kind of the problem. But regardless, in hindsight, I actually think it's a pretty good film, and it's interesting to look at it just with respect to what's happened to the education system. Nick Nolte's always good. Little Man Tate is one of my favorite.
Oh,
films.
that's great.
I love this movie.
Absolutely.
From 1991, directed by Jodie Foster. Jodie Foster plays the mom of this amazing kid, this genius kid, and it's just so wonderful. Adam Hahn Bird, who's really gone on to do nothing, is so great as her son. This movie just tears my heart out.
Yep, it's really good.
Harry Connick Jr. is wonderful. Diane Wiest is wonderful. The mother-son relationship could not be better. This is just absolutely fantastic. An early producing success for Scott Rudin, written by Scott Frank, who, of course, wrote Dead Again and lots of other great films.
A bunch of stuff for Soderbergh?
A bunch of stuff for Soderbergh. Well, still one of the great screenwriters in Hollywood. Really, I just love this movie. So that is on Blu-ray from Olive. The remake of Lord of the Flies by Harry Hook, who does a decent job directing this and then went on to do absolutely nothing. Harry Hook is unheard of. This was a Castle Rock production for 20th Century Fox at the time. And it's it's not a bad film. It's not as good as the black and white classic, but it's faithful to the book, the Golding book, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just not as good as the other one, but it's got good score by Philippe Sard and great performances, including Balthazar Getty, who kind of went on to do an awful lot of really great stuff, including Brothers and Sisters on television and Lost Highway for David Lynch. And, so, I mean, there's nothing wrong with this in particular. It just didn't get its due, so it's nice to have that on Blu-ray. Hollywood Shuffle, which put Robert Townsend on the map, took him away from being just another stand-up comic.
It was a big deal at the time,
It was a huge deal, man. He put this whole movie on his credit cards. He maxed out his credit cards to make this movie, and it became this huge success. He co-wrote it, of course, with Keenen Ivory Wayans. And it was photographed by Peter Deming, by the way. Peter Deming, who's done a lot of David Lynch stuff and is, a real DP. So, I mean, they hired real people to do this and shot it on film. There was no digital at the time. And it still resonates because if you're a black actor in Hollywood, you still sort of face a lot of the same hurdles. So he made a message movie that was entertaining and that was sharp and smart, and he put it all on his credit card, and he scored. His directing career has soured a little bit since, but this movie has not. So that is also on Blu-ray. And then the last one from Olive is Harry and Son, Paul Newman and Robbie Benson. Also with Joanne Woodward, who keeps showing up in all of Paul Newman's later films. Paul Newman directed this, which means it's a little bit saccharine and melodramatic, like most of his stuff, a little too actory and drawn out. But still, this is it's a decent film. One of the last films edited by the great editor Dede Allen before she passed away. And then, real quickly, from the Kino Lorber Classics line, we have on DVD only David Lynch's Wild at Heart and Clint Eastwood in Thunderbolt and Lightfoot, written and directed by Michael Cimino. The reason these are on DVD only is because you get these very interesting deals now. Twilight Time recently released both of these on Blu-ray. So Twilight Time, at least for the time being, has the Blu-ray license on these, but only for those 3,000 copies. So I'm inclined to think that at some point the Twilight Time license will expire. It will revert back to Kino Lorber. Fox and MGM will sort of reassign that license to Kino Lorber, and we'll get another Blu-ray release. Probable, not inevitable, but I think that's interesting. And then the 3 Blu-ray titles from Kino Lorber: Charles Bronson in The White Buffalo, which is a better than average J. Lee Thompson Western from the 70s. The genre is kind of dying in the late 70s, but you have a great score by John Barry, which is pretty cool. Nice performance by Clint Walker as well, believe it or not. Lee Van Cleef and Warren Oates, 2 of the grittiest tough guys ever in Barquero. Also a really cool gritty Western from 1970, right on the edge there when the Western was dying, but it still had a little bit of juice in it. Some great supporting performances in here. Kerwin Matthews, Mariette Hartley, of all people. So that also has a really good score by Dominique Frontier. And then lastly, one of my all-time favorite films ever made, Convoy.
We got a great big convoy.
Man, what a fantastic song. No, it's funny because I remember when I was in elementary school, this is a Sam Peckinpah film, of course. This was back when...
Chris Christopher, it's a big deal. This movie, too, is a big deal at the time.
This was a huge deal.
Because the song was huge.
This inspired all the whole trucker thing with BJ and the Bear. And, everyone was so into trucking at the time. I got a CB radio.
I got a CB radio, too.
I did, too. I was like always trying to, hey, good buddy, how you doing? What's your 1020? 10-4? You're learning all the 10 codes and trying to get truckers on there. I knew all the different trucks. I knew white Freightliner, Peterbilt, all of them. Mack. I knew all the different truck manufacturers. I mean, trucking was like, this movie turned it into a cultural phenomenon.
Actually, that's not true. I didn't have a CB radio. A friend of mine had a CB radio, and I begged him to come over his house whenever I wanted, climb into his little attic, and for as late as I wanted, late at night, and just try to find people on CB.
Yeah.
And you never found anybody except for some weird, lonely, fat, pot-bellied trucker in the middle of nowhere.
Well, here's the last thing I'm going to say about this. I was also a huge fan of this because I was a little kid at the time, and one of my friends, part of my circle of friends at the time, his dad was the editor. And he eventually went into editing as well. But I remember it was, they're from England, and he was like, yeah, my dad, he just cut this movie called Convoy. And I was like, cut? What's cut? Oh, he's the editor. I was like, oh, I don't even know what the hell an editor is. But if your dad worked on a movie, that movie's cool. We're into it. Trucking, Convoy, good buddy. We're into it. It was great.
Trendy. You're just a trendy bastard.
Yeah.
All right, wait, I'm wrapping it up, whether you like it or not.
Wrap it up.
All right, let's start with From a Whisper to a Scream. This is an anthology film from 1987. This stars Vincent Price. Vincent Price at this point is getting a lot older. In fact, it's a little while before he died after this. So it's an anthology film, so there's 4 movies, and so some are better than others. I think ultimately, unless you're a big Vincent Price fan or a big vintage horror fan, I would pass on From a Whisper to a Scream. Then you have a remake rewind double feature. Interesting DVD concept here. We have both versions of The End of the Affair. We have the 1955 version with Deborah Carr and Van Johnson, directed by Edward Dmytryk. And then we have the 1999 remake starring Ray Fiennes and Julianne Moore, directed by Neil Jordan. Of the two, I would take the 1955 version. For me, Ray Fiennes was never a romantic leading man to me. I just never saw him like that.
But you know what? I absolutely do love that. I love the remake, and I particularly love it because of the Michael Nyman score, which if you like the music from the piano and the other handful of scores that Michael Nyman has done, it's a great score.
Michael Nyman, I think it was Michael Nyman, he did a great score for Man with a Camera. The Russian film.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he did.
Was that Nyman?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not sure which version of Man with a Camera is on Blu-ray, if any version's on Blu-ray, but I hope that when it comes out on Blu-ray, if it's not already, correct me if I'm wrong, that they give me the one with the Michael Nyman score because it's really good. Anyway, The End of the Affair, both of those. Also, our penultimate Blu-ray of the week, penultimate meaning Wade, second to last.
Ooh, yeah, use the word correctly.
You're not very bright. A cult comedy from 1990 is Miami Blues, and the reason why I know it's a cult comedy is because I love this movie. This movie is awesome. This is a really funky, brightly colored crime caper starring Fred Ward, Alec Baldwin, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and it's just really... There is nothing funnier than watching Fred Ward put his fake teeth in this movie. I found that so funny. I just think this thing is hilarious. It's brutal and funny, and it's just out there and strange, and I just think this thing it's a cult comedy for a reason, because not everybody gets it. And the good thing is that the Blu-ray has new interviews with Alec Baldwin and Jennifer Jason Leigh, so they like it. If they're going to... Alec Baldwin does not have to come out of hiding to do
this movie will never become a famous classic, because anytime you show this, 2/3 of the theater will be going, what the... And the other third will be laughing their butts off. And it's just... If you're that 33% of the population that loves this kind of comedy, this will be a classic for all time. The other 2/3 just will never get it.
And now George Armitage, who also went on to direct Grosse Pointe Blank with one of the funniest John Cusack films, Grosse Pointe Blank.
So great.
Now, you could give me this if you wanted to.
Oh, no.
Really?
Oh, no. I love that movie. Love it.
Well, you could give me this.
Oh, are you kidding me? That's one of Peter Yates' best films.
I love this movie.
I love this movie, too.
Well, we're going to end on The Friends of Eddie Coyle, because The Friends of Eddie Coyle is just awesome,
fantastic.
and we have been waiting for this thing to come out on Blu-ray. It's about time, 1973.
Yep.
one of Peter Yates' best films. This is also one of Robert Mitchum. You know what? He's getting older. He's got the lines in his face. He plays this. He's like a truck driver who also like runs guns for the mob.
It's great.
And he gets caught up in this thing where like he owes people money, and then all of his friends, who's a friend, who's not a friend. And there's a reason why his name is Eddie Coyle. Because slowly the net tightens around him. That's right. So he's about to go back to jail, so he's got to decide who he trusts, who he doesn't trust. This thing is just great. Peter Boyle as the bar owner is just great too. I love this movie. This is really very atmospheric, cool 70s stuff, folks.
Yep.
You got to go ahead and at least rent this
is.
thing. The Friends of Eddie Coyle, great Blu-ray, of course, from the good folks at Criterion. A must-buy.
All right, with that, the show is over, and please...
Thanks, Axel.
Thank you, Axel. You are the man. You just made Mark's life. You gave him the greatest gift he's ever received, so thank you. And for the rest of you, please send us your gifts by way of just sending us really cool Vox boxes and emails. Send it to gods@digigods.com. Again, gods@digigods.com. If you have a question you want to ask by audio, record it in any format. We don't care. Send us your Vox boxes. We'll slot you into the show, and we'll make a discussion topic of it. Gods@digigods.com. Otherwise, send us your emails. We will read them on a future show. We welcome any and all questions and conversations. Thank you. We'll see you next week.